Have you been told you need to stop doing what you love, whether it's exercise, running, or a sport? Well, here at Dynamic, we don't like that answer. In this podcast, we'll talk to leaders in the health and wellness space from Southwest Florida to get the solutions you need to get you back to doing what you love. Welcome to the Dynamic Naples Podcast. What's going on, Southwest Florida? Today, I want to talk about dietary causes of autoimmunity. Autoimmune disease is very common. There's hundreds of versions of it. Things like lupus, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's disease, even something like a Dupuytren's contracture, which I'll get into in a few weeks from now, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, IBS, psoriasis, so a lot of skin conditions. There's a huge list of them. So what is it? It's a condition where the body's own immune system attacks its own tissues, and the type of tissues that are attacked determines the type of autoimmunity that you can develop. So what causes this? When you Google this and you look at your typical mainstream medical website, it's going to say idiopathic, which just means that we don't really know the cause. But there's been some development and research that have pointed to a few things, namely vitamin D deficiency and something called molecular mimicry, which I'll get into in a few minutes here. So let's start off with vitamin D deficiency, probably the most common nutrient that's deficient most people these days, probably because there's been a push towards plant-based diets, which is fine, but the fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are found primarily in animal food. So as we push towards more of a plant-based paradigm, we tend to be deficient in those four and some other nutrients. So vitamin D deficiency has a critical role in absorption of calcium. So it keeps our bones and our teeth strong. Everyone kind of knows that one. That's why milk is fortified with vitamin D. But it also has a huge role in the immune system. It's a strong anti-inflammatory, anti-fibrotic, and antioxidant. There's been several studies that have found an inverse correlation between autoimmune disease development and vitamin D deficiency. In other words, vitamin D goes down, autoimmunity goes up. So sources of vitamin D, I mentioned animal products, but also sunlight. There's been studies that have confirmed that multiple sclerosis, which is a type of autoimmune disease, tends to develop in northern latitudes, so like North America, Northern Europe. And this is probably due to vitamin D deficiency because we can't get enough sun exposure in the northern climates. So basically, if you live north of Georgia or LA and you're vegetarian, it's going to be pretty hard to get vitamin D. You can get it in mushrooms, but you might have to supplement for it. So if you have fractured some bones or cracked some teeth and you've got some autoimmune disease or autoimmune symptoms, vitamin D deficiency might be the underlying culprit. So next, let's get into molecular mimicry. So this is the idea that a shape of a molecule in the body can be similar to something else. It's kind of like a mistaken identity. So under normal circumstances, the immune system kind of patrols around like a security guard. And when it sees something that doesn't belong, it attacks it. That's normally what happens. That's a good system. So sometimes compounds in the foods we eat can look similar to some of the amino acids that we normally use to build stuff, and those things get incorporated wrongly into our diet. So first I want to just give a shout out to Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Paul Mason. They've been talking about this. Give them both a follow. Dr. Ken Berry's out of Nashville. Dr. Paul Mason's out of Australia. Dr. Berry talks about two of these amino acids that sort of wrongly get into our diet. So there are basically, you've probably heard of essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. So non-essential means your body can produce it on its own. Essential means that your body has to get it from a food source. But there's another class of amino acids that's not really talked about. They're called the non-nutritive amino acids or non-protein or non-proteinogenic amino acids. And there's a lot of them, like over 600 of them, and they all come from plant species. So I'm just going to talk about two of them. One is cannabine. Cannabine looks a lot like L-arginine, so like the structure itself looks like it. And it can be found in foods like beans and alfalfa sprouts. So when that gets incorporated into the body, the immune system starts to attack it. And there's been an association between alfalfa and the development of lupus. Another example of a non-nutritive amino acid is azetidine 2-carboxylic acid. This can be found in beets, chives, shallots, onions, garlic, and leeks. It looks like an amino acid called proline. Proline is an important one that's involved in collagen synthesis, so a diet that's high in this azetidine 2-carboxylic acid can inhibit the production of collagen. So if you're having some of these symptoms and you're not getting really any answers, probably a good idea to get your vitamin D checked. So there's a company that you'll hear the ad at the end called Let's Get Checked. I'm a big fan of. They send you the test to your house. I think it's $89 for the vitamin D test with 30% off with my code, which is DPT30. And then you get results within a week, and you can find out if you're vitamin D deficient. Another thought is that you could consider some elimination diets. Talk to a dietitian, of course, first. And then there's two sort of protocols that people tend to be using and doing well with, and that's the Autoimmune protocol, or AIP diet, and the Wahls diet, or Wahls protocol. That's from a Dr. Terry Wahls. You should look up her story. It's really interesting. She had a severe case of multiple sclerosis that she cured. She was wheelchair bound, and now she's like walking, ride a bike, all through dietary changes. So that's Terry Wahls and the Wahls protocol. Unfortunately, right now, the sort of mainstay treatment for a lot of these autoimmune diseases is steroids, corticosteroids, and that's just taking care of inflammation. And if you don't remove the underlying culprit, which in a lot of these cases could be just dietary, it's just going to keep coming back and to be chronically on steroids, and that's not without consequences. There's just one last thing I want to mention, and that is sunlight is super important for vitamin D. You basically would have to drink like 6 glasses of milk to get adequate vitamin D per day. Or you can spend, depending on your skin tone, maybe 15, 20 minutes out in the sun, you get adequate D. So there's 3 types of radiation that come from the sun, UVA, B, and C. UVC does not penetrate Earth's surface or atmosphere, so we don't have to worry about that. UVA makes it all the way to the ground. That one is safe. And UVB only can penetrate the atmosphere at certain times of day because of the wavelength. It's a shorter wavelength than A. And UVB is the one that causes sort of the damage, the skin damage. So that can only affect us when it's basically overhead. When it's the morning or afternoon, there's a bit of an angle, so it has more distance to travel to get to the ground, so it doesn't make it to the ground. So the general rule of thumb is if your shadow is as tall as you, it's safe to be outside without sunscreen. If it's a short shadow, that's where you might need to cover up and protect yourself. The other thing, too, is try to never get a sunburn. Sunburn means you've got some tissue damage. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's I want to dispel the myth that sun is just bad for you. You need it for vitamin D. It also has some other effects. It can lower your A1C, so your blood sugar. It also stimulates nitric oxide release in the bloodstream, so that lowers your blood pressure because nitric oxide is a strong vasodilator. And it sets your circadian rhythm, so it actually helps you sleep. So I'm going to wrap this one up. So just the take-home is autoimmune disease can have some multiple causes, but it looks like vitamin D deficiency is huge, so you need your sunlight, and you could have some dietary sensitivities that may be triggering it as well. So that's all for this week. I'll talk to you soon. Do you have unexplained pain, or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great way to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's liver function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It's sent to you with free shipping, and you get your results in 2 to 5 days. No physician referral needed. Use the code DPT30 for 30% off. Go to letsgetchecked.com and use the code DPT30. Did you know that you can get started with physical therapy without a physician's referral? Physical therapists don't just solve pain, we get down to the root cause and keep it from coming back. We also discuss all things health, such as nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you feel that you could use some help, let's get on a free consult call. Go to www.dynamicnaples.com and sign up for a free call. Also, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us spread the message. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.